Welcome to lecture number 23, ME 210 Fluid Mechanics. We'll continue the discussion that we were having in the previous lecture on internal flows. So today we'll talk about some energy balance ideas, which are very important to understand many people have confusion when studying internal flows as to where the energy is created and how the energy is, what sort of work is done in internal flows. So the first topic is going to be some clarification from yesterday. Okay, so some clarification from lecture number 22. So in lecture number 22, when I talked about the losses, when I said that in the pipe you have to provide some pumping power to compensate for certain losses. So there I mentioned that the losses can be in the form of the work done because of friction or viscosity inside the fluid, as well as the work done because of what's happening in the walls. Okay, so there was a mistake there. So there is, in fact, there's actually no work done by the shear stress on the walls. Okay, let's clarify that with some analysis. Right. So we'll say that we understand the loss mechanism in pipes. Right. So let's proceed with that. So you may remember from lecture number 9, we did some energy balance in the integral discussion. So what we said was that if we apply the control volume analysis, where we had the Reynolds transport theorem applied to a certain extensive property. So if we take the extensive property as the energy, we develop the energy equation for that case. So let us write that equation for this case of a pipe. Okay, so we have a pipe, and this blue color denotes the control volume in this case. So we are considering the control volume, which includes the fluid inside the pipe. Okay, this is some section of a pipe. I mean, some length of a pipe. So the energy balance equation. Let me write that again. So the energy balance equation for this case, it looks like. Right. So the energy balance equation for this case, it can be written as Q minus small w dot S minus small w dot V. So Q denotes the heat exchange, or the net heat in. Ws denotes the shaft work. I mean, the rate of shaft work. In this case, there is no shaft work, but we're just including this here in the first step. Okay, the shaft work is out. So work done by the system is considered positive. That's the reason we have a negative sign here. And this W dot V is the viscous work. Okay, again, done by the system. Right. So on the right hand side, we had the first term we had was the enthalpy term. So H hat O minus H hat I. Okay, so that's a change in the enthalpy. Then we had the kinetic energy term. And then we had the potential energy term. So this was the energy balance equation that we had written for this control volume in lecture number 9. Okay, so this of course was for some general control volume, but we'll want to write this for our pipe situation, which is the blue volume that I have shown here. So in this pipe, what we see is that the Q is 0. So net heat in to the system is 0. So we are not adding any heat or removing any heat. So let's say it's completely insulated. There's no conduction, convection, or radiation happening into or out of the system. So Q is 0. And again, the shaft work is also 0. So there's no shaft that is doing some work, or there's no turbine that is extracting any work. So that's 0. Let's see what the viscous work is. Okay, so the viscous work in this case is, of course, since we're talking about the control volume, we'll be interested in the work done because of viscosity at the boundaries, as we discussed in the last as in lecture number 9, that the viscous work inside the forces, because of the forces inside the control volume, is not of interest. It's only on the boundaries. So on the boundaries, we do have a wall shear stress. So as the fluid flows from left to right, the wall shear stress is applied by the walls to the left. Okay, so that is there, but the viscous work actually is given as, so we'll say on boundaries 3 and 4. Okay, so we'll call the boundaries as 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's on boundaries 3 and 4 that we have viscous work. So we'll call it tau xy, and then the work is this times the velocity in the x direction times dA. But let's call it xy wall. Now this v is 0. Okay, so v is in this case it's the x direction velocity. So this shear stress is there, but there's a no slip condition. So because of that no slip condition, there is no work done. It's like you're pushing a wall. You're applying a force, but the wall is not moving. The fluid is not moving at the boundary walls. So that means that there is no work done because of the shear stress on the walls. So that was the mistake I made in the last lecture by saying that there is friction on the walls that is causing the friction losses. It's actually, the wall friction actually is not causing any, it's not doing any work. Okay, so that I'll correct myself. So this term becomes 0 because of the no slip condition. Right. Let's proceed with the energy balance. So then we have our enthalpy terms. So enthalpy, we can write H as U hat plus P upon rho. Okay, U hat is the internal energy per unit mass. So we'll write this as U hat out minus U hat in. And then I'll have the pressure term. So plus P out minus P in upon rho. And then you see the velocity term. Now the velocity term, V naught minus Vi, squares of these by 2 is 0. Okay, because V naught is equal to Vi. That's from continuity equation. Right. So at the boundary number 1, boundary number 2, you have the same velocity distribution. Yeah, we're talking about the average velocity here. So we don't see any change in the dynamic head. And then finally, we have G times Z naught minus Zi. Now, in this case that we've considered, there's a horizontal pipe. So that means that this term also becomes 0. We'll say horizontal pipe. Right. So that's all we are left with. So let's take Pi minus P naught upon rho to the left hand side. On the right hand side, we have U naught minus Ui. Right. And what is this U naught? This U naught is the internal energy per unit mass. Now the internal energy we know is the specific heat, the CV, the volume specific heat, times delta T, or T in this case. Okay, so this becomes CV times T naught minus Ti. Right? So what we have here is the pressure difference. So Pi minus P naught is the extra pressure that has been applied, the pressure difference that's been applied, let's say by the pump. So we know that we have to supply a pressure difference to be able to drive the flow. So this Pi minus P naught is delta P, and on the right hand side we have CV times delta T. So T out minus T in. So the fluid that is leaving has a temperature T out, and the fluid that is entering has a temperature Ti. Okay, so what we see is that it is the energy that we supply in the form of pressure drop is converted to internal energy. It increases the temperature of the fluid. Okay, so this temperature increase why is there a temperature increase? So this is because of viscous dissipation. Okay, so the layers in the fluid, they are slipping over each other. Now the fluid layers, just at the boundaries, as we saw at the wall, there was no work done. But inside the control volume, the layers slip over each other. So when two layers slip over each other, then that creates some loss in the form of heat. And since we did not allow the heat to leave, we said that we assume that it's an adiabatic situation. We're not allowing any heat to enter or leave. So the only thing that heat can do now is to increase the temperature of the fluid. So that increases the temperature. So all this work done because by the pump in the form of delta P is converted to heat. It results in the increase in temperature. Okay, so the H losses we talked about yesterday is basically the losses due to friction inside the fluid. So if we had an ideal fluid, okay, so ideal fluid is something which is inviscid. There's no viscosity. Viscosity is 0. So this kind of a fluid will not dissipate any energy because it's ideal. There's no viscosity. So in that case, you will not require any pump to sustain the flow. Right? So there'll be no losses because of friction between the layers in an ideal fluid. But in a real fluid, there'll be losses. The more viscous the fluid is, intuitively, the more losses there'll be. Okay, so if you are using a very thick, very viscous oil as opposed to, let's say, air in the pipe, you'll definitely require a bigger pump to drive that viscous oil flow as compared to the pump flow, as compared to the airflow. Right. Now let's also talk about can we find this temperature difference? Okay, this course, remember, is on fluid mechanics, not on heat transfer, but it's worth having an understanding like this kind of an integral analysis that we just did by taking this blue control volume, which encompasses the complete fluid inside the pipe or a section of a pipe or a length of a pipe. This did not allow us to find what the temperature increases because of the viscosity. It simply told us that whatever energy we supply results in an increase in temperature. Of course, we can calculate the temperature increase, but it does not tell us. This is something we sort of hypothesized, that it I mean, there's no other reason. It's not because of the walls. So it's the only thing that is happening here is the viscous dissipation inside the pipe. But is there a way to link the viscosity of the fluid to the amount of or the change in temperature? Okay, it is. I mean, it's energy balance. So if we write the energy balance in the differential form, which we typically do in a heat transfer course, we should be able to link the temperature change inside the fluid to the viscosity of the fluid. Okay, so we won't do that in this course, although if you check section number, if you're interested to know that, when you check section number 4.5 in the book, in the textbook, and that will that talks about the differential form of the energy balance. Okay, so we have done differential form of momentum balance, which was the Navier-Stokes equation, but we skipped on the differential form of energy balance because that typically is a part of the heat transfer course. But it's worth mentioning here to clarify these things, otherwise these confusions always remain. Is the energy loss happening on the walls or is it happening inside the fluid? Okay, so it's good to have the ideas clear. Now, let's mention, I mean, let me write the equation, and I mean, I won't derive it here, but just to give you an idea. So if we had written the energy balance for a smaller control volume, not the complete blue control volume which we took, if, for example, this is your pipe again, and you had taken a control volume which was a small control volume, the same idea that we have done, we took a control volume in the flow, and the control volume size was tended to 0, and that helped us write the differential form of momentum, or in this case energy balance. So if you had taken this, then what happens is if you apply the control volume analysis, then in this case you will talk about the viscous tau xy on the in fact all the walls, but in this case, since the flow is happening from left to right, what you'll see is you'll talk about these tau xy's on the top and bottom walls, but now they'll be worked done because the velocity x velocity is not 0 on the top and bottom walls. They're non-zero. Depending on where you are in the control volume, it will be a function of r. That's a radial distance from the center. So these will be non-zero. So you'll have some viscous work or viscous dissipation term in the equation. So, I mean, let me write. Typically, what you get is you get the equation as rho Cv. Cv is your constant volume specific heat, and then you have d temperature by d time. So the rate of change of temperature with time. On the right hand side, you have the viscous dissipation term, which looks something like this. So this is from viscous work at boundaries. Okay. Of course, I mean, this is not the complete equation. It's a very special form. We have assumed that there is no heat loss due to conduction. Otherwise, you have a conduction term as well. That's called a diffusion term. The fluid is incompressible. Okay. There's no shaft work and so on. So lots of assumptions here, but I mean, in this case, the special case that we had taken in the previous case, so when you write the equations in the differential form, you end up getting the relation between the temperature increase with the viscosity term. So this helps you calculate the change in temperature with time as compared to the change in viscosity. I mean, because of the viscosity. Okay. Of course, I mean, this d temperature by d time will have both the local change as well as the convective change. So you'll have, I mean, if you're talking about steady state situation like here, then you'll have some convective change term. So that will give you the spatial change. So going from left to right, you'll have some increase in temperature. So that dt by dx is something that you can calculate. Okay, so I won't go into any further detail here because this is a part of, I mean, you will have a formal discussion, derivation and discussion about these things in the course in the next semester on heat transfer. Because again, heat exchangers, etc., have flow of fluids inside pipes, and the temperature of the fluid will increase or decrease as it goes from left to right, depending on what sort of heat exchange is happening between the fluids inside and outside the pipe. Okay, so we'll have plenty of discussion in the course on heat transfer. If you're interested further, then you can look at the lectures on heat transfer, which are also available in the YouTube link. Right. So I'll just mention here. So refer to ME 303 lectures for more details, or wait for a few more months. Okay, so let's summarize this discussion that we've had. So the first point is that there's no work done due to the walls, due to the wall shear stress. And summary point number 2 is the dissipation due to friction inside the fluid is balanced by the pumping power, or we can simply say delta P. Right. So this completes the discussion on that we have just started on some clarification from yesterday on the understanding of loss mechanism in pipes. So the friction losses that we'll talk about is actually because of the friction between the layers in the fluid. But we'll clarify that further. I mean, there's a link between wall shear stress and what's happening inside the fluid, but we will definitely discuss that further soon. Right. So as I said, today's discussion is about certain energy ideas. The next idea that I want to talk about is on clarifying or correcting the Bernoulli's equation that we have been using for one-dimensional flows now for two-dimensional flows. Okay, so this is, let's say, topic number B. Okay, so we'll be correcting the 1D form of the Bernoulli equation. So we'll correct this 1D form of the Bernoulli's equation for viscous 2D flows. Right. So till now we have been assuming that we have been applying the Bernoulli's equation for situations where the fluid is inviscid. Okay, we discussed that. I mean, that is where the Bernoulli's equation is actually applicable. But we also discussed that if you have, let's say, let's write that. So 1D form of the Bernoulli equation. So we took two sections of a pipe. So let's say you have a pipe. We have section number 1 and section number 2. So we have been applying the energy balance, so the pressure energy in the form of writing the equation in the form of heads plus the kinetic energy plus the gravitational potential energy is on point number 1 is equal to point number 2, or the section number 2. Okay, so this is what we have been applying, and this has been for frictionless fluids. And of course, the real fluids that we'll talk about are not inviscid or frictionless. So we have to include some friction, some effective friction in this case. Okay. Now, if there is friction, so what we have said is that you can add some H loss. Okay, so in that case, you can get rid of this. So if there's friction, then the energy at section number 1 is equal to energy at section number 2 plus some loss. The flow is happening, of course, from left to right. So these losses are friction losses, as we know, but this is how we apply this. But there is a problem here. Now it works quite well if the flow is one-dimensional. Of course, in reality, the flow is not one-dimensional, but what we mean by one-dimensional is that the velocity distribution along any cross-section is uniform. Okay, so what that means is this is working quite well if your velocity distribution is all uniform. Okay, but we know that in pipes, in viscous flow inside pipes, the distribution of the fluid is parabolic. That's what we learned in chapter number 4 when we solved the differential equations of fluids for the Poiseuille flow problem. We found that the velocity distribution is parabolic, so it's not uniform. Okay, so it's just not a one-dimensional flow at all. The flow is the u velocity is changing along the y direction. So you have both x and y directions are important. Okay, so this form of the Bernoulli's equation will fail, and we will see why. Okay. So this form of Bernoulli equation fails for we'll say due to the non-uniform velocity profile. Okay, and you can guess it is these terms which have the dynamic head or the kinetic energy or the velocity term is what will fail, because for a uniform velocity, these v1 and v2 are simply the value of the velocity along a cross section. But for a viscous flow situation, the velocity profile, let's say, is parabolic. So then what is this v? It's not a one-dimensional flow, it's changing along the radius. So what we have been doing is we are using the area average values till now. So my question is, can I replace, let's call this equation number 1. So v1 in equation number 1 with area average velocity. So that is equal to the volume flow rate divided by the cross section area. Can I simply do that, and will equation number 1 still be valid? The answer is no. Okay, let us see that. let's see what the kinetic energy flux is at any cross section. You know what a flux is. Let's find the kinetic energy flux. So the flux at any cross section is the integral along the area, and then if you remember the Reynolds transport theorem where we talked about the fluxes, it's simply the we're talking about an infinitesimal area because we're integrating over the area because the velocity is changing at different changing along the area. So we multiply the density times dA, so that of course, so we need to have this dA, and then we have a v dot n. Okay, so this is the mass flow rate, and then we multiply this with um, the product of the v square by 2. Now we have to use, let's draw a figure again. And in this case, I'll assume that the distribution is, well, let's not call it parabolic. It could be anything. Let's say that this is my velocity profile, and we'll call it u as a function of r. Okay, so r is a radial coordinate, and the diameter is equal to 2 times capital R. So capital R is the radius. Okay, so this is in the integral we have the mass flow rate, the dm dot, and then we have u square upon 2g. Sorry, just 2. So basically what we've written is we've written half m dot v square. That is what we have written here, okay, in the integral form. So that's the flux of the, we call it the flux of the kinetic energy. The energy that's passing a given volume. Right. So this is, if you look at the energy equation, actually this is the term that you have, and ultimately that converts to your v square by 2g term in the Bernoulli's equation. So this is what you have. And earlier, what we did was, because so let's say for uniform velocity, what happens is this flux of Ke, this simply becomes because your velocity is uniform. So this is simply your u square can be taken out of the integral. So this is u square by 2. Now density is constant. We are assuming an incompressible fluid, and then the integral of v dot n. Now again, v dot n is simply your u, so this becomes a u cube, and then you have the integral over dA, which is the total area, which is a. Okay, so this is what we had for a uniform flow velocity. Okay, so this is what we did, and then if you put that in the energy equation, this is v square by 2g is what you get. In this case, it's u. Right, but now we can't do that because our velocity u is changing with r. So this integral has to be solved depending on what the velocity profile u as a function of r is. If it's parabolic, you have to substitute that. Right. Now in the 1D analysis, what we do is, well, actually, this is exactly what results in the 1D analysis. So this is so this is half m dot v square. V is the uniform velocity that we are talking about. Right. So they are equal. I mean, you can check that. So if you check this term, so density times rho AV, or rho AU in this case, gives you m dot, and then you have capital U square by 2. I've been writing U and V. Let me simply write this as, this is a small u, and this I'll call capital V only. It's a uniform velocity, so it's capital V. The average is the same. Okay, so this is half rho AV is m dot, and then you have V square. Okay, so we have been writing the flux of kinetic energy as half m dot V square for a 1D analysis, and that is also the same for a uniform velocity distribution along a cross section. But now we don't have that, okay, so they will not be equal. But we still have to include this term in the Bernoulli's equation to be able to use that. So what we do is, okay, so what we do is, instead of using a half m dot V square, which works for a uniform velocity profile, we use alpha times half m dot V square. Okay, so we define an alpha. So we define an alpha in such a way so that we define an alpha, which is this alpha we call the kinetic energy correction factor. Okay, so you are somehow correcting for the term half m dot V square in the energy balance equation. Okay, so you use this term. And remember, this V now is the area average. So the V here is the volume flow rate divided by the cross section area, because one has to define V. It's not a uniform velocity profile anymore. So the V in the Bernoulli's equation, which gives us some sort of 1D analysis, is equal to the volume flow rate divided by the cross section area. Okay, so now what we do is we equate the flux of kinetic energy. Now the exact value is the value under the integral, which we just wrote as rho u square by 2. Okay, and then we have v dot n, but in this case the flow is one directional, so this is u again times dA. Okay, so this becomes u cube. You equate this to alpha times half, and then you have m dot, and this is v square. Right, so this is some sort of a definition of your kinetic energy correction factor alpha. So depending on the situation, depending on the kind of velocity profile we have in a given situation, we'll have a different alpha. And then you can include this term in the Bernoulli's equation. So basically the v square by 2g term will become alpha times v square by 2g term. Okay, then what is the alpha here? So let's calculate the, let's write the expression for alpha. Basically, I simply move around things. So alpha becomes, let's simplify the equation, that's easier. So rho can be taken out because rho is the, it's an incompressible flow, incompressible fluid. So we can take this, and then we have u cube times dA. On the right hand side, we have an alpha, there's a 2, and the mass flow rate is again density times the area times velocity. So we have this. Okay, so the 2 cancels with the 2, the rho cancels with the rho. So alpha now becomes integral 1 by a u by v cube times dA. Now remember, u is a function of r. Okay, so this is your definition of the kinetic energy correction factor alpha. So you can say now we can use the 1D Bernoulli equation for viscous flow in pipes, right? So what the equation now becomes is P1 upon rho g plus alpha times V1 square upon 2g plus Z1 P2 by rho g plus alpha times V2 square by 2g plus Z2 plus the losses. Right. So it's the same kind of pipe we had 1 and 2. Right. So this is the form of Bernoulli's equation for viscous flow in pipes. So be careful when you're using this kind of when applying Bernoulli's equation for pipes. Right. So for a situation, let's calculate alpha. Let's see what the alpha value is, because we know that for laminar flow in pipes, as we saw in the chapter on differential analysis, for Poiseuille flow, we know that for Poiseuille flow, that is flow in circular cross-section pipe. Well, Poiseuille flow is general term used for flow between any two plates or pipe, but in this case for circular cross-section pipe, we know that the flow profile is parabolic. So we know that u as a function of r is equal to some u max times 1 minus r upon capital R square. Yes, you can check. So if you put small r equal to 0 here, then that is the center of the pipe. So this becomes u max. So okay, so this becomes u max. So this is u max. And if you put small r equal to capital R in the expression here, then it becomes equal to 0. So these are the walls. So at the walls, you have a no slip condition. So the velocity is x velocity is 0. And of course, I mean, it's a parabolic relation with r. So that's the velocity profile. We know we have solved that in pipes, laminar flow. Okay, that's very important. It's for a laminar flow, this is what we have. Okay, so for that situation, we can calculate the value of alpha. So alpha, if we remember, this is 1 by a integral over the cross section, small u as a function of r upon capital V cube dA. Okay, so a in this case is pi capital R square, and dA is 2 pi small r dr. Radius is going from 0 to capital R, and we have we can take this out. So we have U max upon V, this whole is a cube, 1 minus the cube of this. All right. And we also know that this U max is twice of the average flow V. I mean, we can calculate that. I won't do that here, but I'll probably do it in the next lecture because we'll require that. Okay. So this Umax is twice of V. This is we can calculate that. So using this, I mean, it's some amount of work. I don't want to do it. So you can substitute these values, and then what you'll see is that this alpha will come out to be 2. Okay, so for laminar Poiseuille flow, you get the alpha value as equal to 2. Okay, so this is the value of the kinetic energy correction factor for laminar flows. So it is important. I mean, it's a value of 2. I mean, if you had this equation and you made a mistake, and if your v square by 2g term was significant, then you'll end up making 100% error in the calculation of this particular term v square by 2g. So you have to be careful what the value is. For turbulent flows, we'll see that this value will be much less than 2. So in many highly turbulent flows, we can actually take alpha equal to 1. But for laminar flows, theoretically, we have seen that this is equal to 2. I'll strongly suggest that you actually put the values and solve the integral yourself and see that this value is equal to 2. And for showing that U max is equal to V, we can simply, because remember the definition of V was area average. So this V is basically the integral of U as a function of R over the area. This is so that's the definition of V. So you can calculate that, and this will give you U max is equal to 2V. Right. Okay, so this is what I want to discuss in topic number B, which was correcting the 1D form of the Bernoulli equation for viscous 2D flows. Okay, so let's see if we can apply that. So let's apply this new form of Bernoulli equation that we have learned to our pipe flow situation, and then we'll stop there, and then we'll proceed in the next lecture. So let's apply this. This is a new section, like new topic. So I'll call it the modified Bernoulli equation right now, but later I'll just simply call it Bernoulli equation. Just say so in this case, we have p square, p1 by rho g plus z1 plus alpha v1 square by 2g. On the right hand side, plus h friction. Okay, sometimes we'll call losses, but we know that these losses are because of the friction inside the fluid, so we'll call it h friction. Now, in this case, when we are applying it to the pipe flow, let's say we are talking about a pipe flow situation where the pipe is horizontal. Okay, so for this kind of a pipe flow situation, your Z1 and Z2 are both 0 because it's horizontal, so there's no potential energy change. In fact, because of continuity, even the kinetic energy terms are 0. Okay, so what we are left with, and this is there's nothing new. I mean, this is the same equation that we same relation I showed it to you in the last lecture. The pressure drop is equal to the losses, friction losses. Right. So this delta P by rho G is equal to the friction loss. So the pumping power that we require has to compensate for the friction losses inside the pipe. Again and again, I mean, it's just a repetition of that. I just want to show that if you apply this modified Bernoulli's equation, you still get the same thing. So we didn't make a mistake earlier while applying the incorrect Bernoulli's equation, because the velocity term just cancels out because of the continuity equation. V1 is equal to V2. Right. Now, if the pipe was inclined, okay, so let's say the pipe was inclined in such a way that the flow was happening from top to bottom. If that was the case, then what happens is you'll also have the potential energy term. So on the left hand side, you have delta P plus delta P by rho G plus delta Z, and that will be equal to the friction losses. You can check that. So in this case, what's happening is that pressure drop is given by the pump, and gravity is also helping us. So collectively, the pressure drop because of the pump plus the potential energy change is compensating the losses. Now, of course, I mean, you can intuitively think about it. So if the pipe was inclined and the gravity by itself was able to balance the losses, then the flow will start to happen. You can expect the flow to happen in a pipe which is inclined because of gravity. If it was inclined the other way, let's say like this, and the flow was happening from bottom to top, in that case, your pumping power has to compensate for the friction losses plus also the gravity, because you have to increase the energy of the fluid as well as compensate for the friction losses in the fluid. Okay, so in this case, you have delta P by rho G minus delta Z, or you can move the delta Z to the right hand side. So then you get this relation. So be careful. I mean, in some cases, when the pipe is inclined, there's sometimes a confusion. So one has to be clear that this relation where your delta P is linked to the friction losses is coming from the Bernoulli equation. And there you also have the potential energy term because of the height difference. So one has to correct it. Don't without thinking, just don't write delta P by rho G is equal to HF, even if the pipe is inclined. Right. So we will stop here for today. And I mean, today's lecture mainly was simply clarifying certain energy balance ideas, as I promised in the beginning of the lecture. So the energy balance ideas have been reinforced, and hopefully you will not have any confusion when applying the energy balance ideas for viscous flows in pipes. Okay, with this, we have reached a point where we can now start working with relating our pressure drop with the volume flow rate. So remember, I mentioned in the last lecture yesterday that the whole aim of this exercise is to be able to relate our pumping power, that is delta P, with your Q. Okay, so how does this change as a function of Q and some other fluid properties and the geometry? But this is typically what you want. So we have reached one step ahead where we can now relate this delta P with Q. Okay, so next lecture we'll start this exercise for viscous flows, because as we said, the theoretical ideas are for laminar flows. So theoretical ideas will be developed first, and then in the lecture after that, we'll move to turbulent flows in pipes. Okay. So I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.